Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2015 Conversation with the Governor. Please welcome to the stage the President and CEO of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, Rob Wunderling.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this, our annual Conversation with the Governor. And today, we're truly honored to have Governor Tom Wolf join us for what I think will be an outstanding program. This isn't a signature event for your Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. And before we begin, I would like to recognize two individuals. First, who you'll be hearing from later in the program, your chairman of your Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, Dennis O'Brien from Exelon Peacock Corporation. Dennis? And second, it really is my pleasure to introduce not only my predecessor, but a predecessor to Governor Tom Wolf, and that is Governor Mark Schweiker. Mark, glad you're here. So as all things at your Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, this event could not be possible without the tremendous support of significant sponsors and underwriters that are listed on the banner before you. But I do really want to thank our title sponsors, Stradley, Ronan, Stevens, and Young, and in particular a member of our Board of Directors, Executive Committee, and past chairman of the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, the managing partner and leader of Stradley, Bill Sasso. Bill, thank you. And you'll be hearing from Matt O'Donnell momentarily, but if you could just hold your applause as we also recognize 6ABC, the ACE Group, Burnham, Baird, Citizens Bank, Comcast, NBC 10, Telemundo 62, Dow, Eisner Amper, PFM Group, the Philadelphia Visitors and Convention Center. And this banner is brought to you by our banner partner, Barry and Homer. And as usual, our collateral materials brought to you today by Interactive Group and Media. So a round of applause for Innovative Print and all of our sponsors today. So as I said at the outset, we truly are honored that Governor Wolf is joining us today with this conversation and with this dialogue. And what we know full well as a regional metropolitan chamber committed to this city and the greater Philadelphia region, that the coin of the realm is a job, and that we are driven towards sound public policy and advocacy that is focused on growth and prosperity. And from our vantage point, it's been great to work with Governor Wolf and his senior team and his administration so early in a new administration to achieve those overarching goals that we will work on together. So we should get this show started. And with that, let me introduce of counsel to the Stradley firm, a good friend and one of our leaders, Josh Shapiro. Josh?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Rob, for that introduction, and Dennis O'Brien and the Chamber of Commerce leadership and all of the members of the Chamber. It is indeed an honor to be here and have the opportunity to introduce our 47th Governor, Governor Tom Wolf. I'm here today on behalf of Stradley Ronan and our extraordinary chairman, Mr. Bill Sasso. Bill is a mentor to me, as I know he is to many others, and Stradley Ronan continues to have a hand in so many important civic exercises and activities and business issues all throughout the Commonwealth and the city of Philadelphia. And Bill, thank you for your great leadership at Stradley Ronan. It's indeed an honor to welcome the governor to his first conversation with our chamber. The governor's motto, as some of you heard during his budget address, is jobs that pay, schools that teach, and government that works. Exactly what this chamber has been working on in a bipartisan effort for many, many years. There should be wonderful synergy between this governor and you and the important work that the chamber does. After all, Governor Wolf was a forklift operator, a warehouse worker, and of course an executive. He spent nearly 3 decades running the Wolf Organization, building it into a successful company, not once, but twice. Under his leadership, he was able to reinvent the Wolf organization, to design it and source Wolf brand products built here in Pennsylvania and across the United States, all throughout our country. Not only did Governor Wolf run a good business, but he also treated his workers very well by sharing profits and giving them good pay and solid benefits. He's also sat where you sat, as a member of the State Chamber Board, as a member of the County Chamber of Commerce, and of course as chairman of the York County Chamber of Commerce and the organization Better York. He worked as a partner with area colleges and businesses to train our workers and prepare them for the 21st century economy. He has brought that sense of business acumen and business knowledge to the governor's mansion, and we are all better for it. He understands how government and business must intersect if our communities are to thrive and be successful. He is here today to talk about that vision. Moderating our discussion is our very own Matt O'Donnell from 6ABC. We are grateful to him, Bernie Prezenik, and the entire team at 6ABC for Matt being here. And at this time, it is my high honor to introduce Matt and the 47th Governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for his first conversation with this chamber, Governor Tom Wolf.
Good afternoon, everyone. If there is any question as to who the governor is, we asked for waters, and they brought the small, lukewarm one for me, and they gave the governor a tall one that was in the refrigerator a few moments ago. Governor, thanks so much.
I enjoy this job very much.
Thanks so much for being here, and I would imagine that you feel quite comfortable speaking to an audience composed of people from the Chamber of Commerce, but also business people, because you are both.
I was. Now I'm governor.
You met with Jim Kenney today, as we all know. He exacted a landslide victory. Many are already calling him mayor for historical reasons, how things work here in the city of Philadelphia. Your impressions of Jim Kenney meeting him today, and what type of mayor would he be?
Well, I think he'll make a great mayor. I knew him actually when he was still in city council and was impressed. And again, I came to politics very late in life from a business background. So my impressions of him came from someone who's looking to, judging people by how I thought they would operate. And I think he has a good sense of how to operate a city. I think he got that from, 26 years as city council person. But also he put together a really unusual coalition, people from all different walks of life. He himself came from South Philly, I think, and we had lunch today at the Broad Street Ministry, so it was not the usual place for a successful candidate to have lunch, and it was we had a nice conversation. I'm impressed. I think Philadelphia's going to be well served if he wins the election. I also met Melissa. She was
Melissa Murray Bailey.
impressive, too.
May I say who picked up the tab?
Well, no, yeah.
Well,
As you know, we have a no gift policy, and so I thought subtly went up to the contribution table after, and I said, "How much do you think that lunch was worth?" And they told me, and so I paid it. And I said, "This is a contribution," and that was just what we do.
Well, I asked that because, as everyone knows, you are not taking a salary for being governor here in Pennsylvania. I want to talk about an issue that the Chamber tells me is their top issue right now in terms of legislation facing Harrisburg, and that is pension reform. And a lot of people describe it this way. It's a huge pothole in the road, and people keep driving over, and it keeps getting deeper and deeper, and eventually you're going to have to fill it in so you can progress and go forward. I know you've been talking to people about what to do and your ideas. Let me, for one thing, ask, would you be in favor of changing existing state workers' pensions and how they're allocated?
I think, no, here's my view of the pension issue. And I believe we have a big problem, and it is something we have to address. And if we keep doing what I think we've been doing, and that is delaying action, it's going to get worse. The problem, I think a lot of people are aware, the problem comes from the fact that while the employees were making contributions into the plan for forever, the employer for the last 15, 16, 17 years was not. I'm not sure everybody realizes that. We were not paying, or the Commonwealth was not paying what it should have paid. Now, in my company, if I had done that, and the regulator came to me and I said, I think I'd like to make up this unfunded pension liability by just reducing the benefit to my employees, they wouldn't let me do that. But that's essentially what I think one of the ideas is right now. I'm against that. I think we should really look at ways to pay the debt that we owe, and that's not going to be fun. That is what I think is causing the angst. Because every year we delay payment, it gets bigger, just like a MasterCard bill. So we need to pay that. In my budget, I'm proposing a way to do that. We borrow some money to plug the hole. That saves us about $1.5 billion over the next 5 years, and tie funding to the future to a specific cash stream that will repay that debt. In the meantime, pay what we owe and get over that arc that allows us to get back to the full funding of the pension plan over the next however many years it takes to get there. But I think getting over that arc is the key point. My proposal actually does that. So I agree that we have a problem with the pension. I agree that we have to address it now. I believe it's a debt problem, not a problem of plan design. Plan design was changed pretty dramatically 5 years ago. And so I'm really for paying that debt. That's my focus.
My apologies, I'm being asked to tell you to move your microphone up a few.
How did you hear that? This is magic.
And I don't even have anything in my ear,
Is that
like
high
I do
enough?
back at the station.
Is that high enough? Okay.
Perfect.
Better. Okay. Thank you.
Let's talk about your budget,
Okay.
your budget proposal. Higher income sales taxes, natural gas drilling taxes, lower corporate taxes, altering the way schools are funded so property taxes can be lowered. Independent Fiscal Office, which is nonpartisan, says that even low-income Pennsylvanians would see a net increase when you put all these, the whole package together. Do you disagree with that? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, I think it depends on the assumptions you bring to anything. The things that we looked at, if you're making $100,000 or less, you should see some benefits. If you're making, I think someone was bringing someone, a family making $30,000 or $40,000 with a family of 4, should see substantial savings. Now, that's based on a lot of assumptions about the kind of house you live in, the kind of consumption patterns you have. But I think that the key is, however you want to parse that and look at where the increase or decrease in taxes falls, my point is that I think what we ought to be trying for is for all Pennsylvanians to get a better Commonwealth, to get schools that actually are doing what they should be doing in every zip code, not just in certain zip codes, where we have actually private sector jobs that are being created at a pace that actually provides family-sustaining wages for Pennsylvanians, and where we have a government that's actually operating efficiently and effectively. That's what we really need. That's what I'm trying to do, and part of that is resetting the way we pay taxes. Right now, property taxes, I think, are unfair. I think in some places they're fine, but in some places they're not. Some places we pay too much. The Economist, I think about 2 months ago, not a radical magazine by any stretch of the imagination, made the point that the United States is one of the few, if not the only country in the world, developed country in the world, that actually puts the least amount of dollars into its most challenged school districts. And not only that, but charges through its millage rate on property taxes the highest rates to do that. It doesn't make any sense. If you think about that, it doesn't make any sense. So what I'm trying to do, and when I was in York, I was chair of an organization called Better York, which was like a CEO organization that was focused on the revitalization of the city of York. And one of the issues we faced was these fiscal disparities between school districts. 2/3 of the tax bill in a place like York is the school tax, and it's a property tax. And it's huge, and it's much, much bigger than surrounding areas. So my proposal is to provide property tax relief. That's going to help individual taxpayers, but it's going to help a lot of municipalities, rural and urban, that are struggling with an unfair way to fund public education. I'm also looking at adding funding, investing more in education so that places like Philadelphia will get an extra $159 million in education funding. You can't throw money at any problem, but you can't disinvest. You got to invest in something that you think is important. I think education in a free market economy, in a limited government democracy, there is nothing more important than investing in education. I think that's the investment that gives the biggest return for an economy and a society like ours, and that's what my budget is about. So yeah, there are people, you can sort of parse the way the tax burden falls, but in the end, we have a fairer tax system and a much better Pennsylvania, and I think that should be the goal.
Your budget proposal is expansive. There's a lot in there. Are you a governor that asks for A, B, C, D, and E, hoping that you get A, B, and C?
I'm a human being who's been in business. I mean, is there anybody here who hasn't negotiated? I mean, you're reasonable. You try to lay out a vision for what you want your business, your community, your commonwealth to be, and you say, these are the things I think we ought to do. Let's have a conversation. And I think that's what I'm trying to spark here. So it's not so much a negotiation as a conversation. This is what I think we ought to do. I think we ought to be thinking expansively about Pennsylvania. This is a great commonwealth. We should not we should not settle for saying, we're just Pennsylvania. No, we're not. We're Pennsylvania. And we ought to do great things. We ought to have high expectations of ourselves. And I think that's what I brought to that budget. That should be the beginning of a conversation. I think I have principles and I have ambitions. And I think one of the things anybody's going to have a tough time negotiating away from me is the idea that we can do better. We can do better. We should do better. This is a great state, and that's what I'm trying to achieve in my budget. But if someone has some other ideas as to how we can be greater, I'm all ears.
We'll get back to policy in a moment, but I wanted to throw in a question about the Amtrak crash. You were here the day it happened, or the day after it happened.
No, I was there the day it happened.
Okay,
I've been here four or five different times, plus meeting with the families, plus going to some of the facilities.
Let me just ask you, as a person and as a governor, when you first saw the wreckage, what did you think?
That was interesting. I'm an old man. Come on, I was looking for a little more sympathy there. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I was going to bed at my normal 9:30 in York County.
I remember a president going to bed at that time.
Yeah, right. Of course, in York County, we eat lunch around 5 a.m., so just be careful. But anyway, the phone rang, and someone, my staff said, there's been a derailment in Philadelphia. And I said, well, I live on the railroad tracks in my town in York County, so I know a little bit of derailments and things like that. Okay. But 10 minutes later, the phone rang again, so I said, this looks like this might be serious. So I got up, got dressed, and came down to Philadelphia, to the site. And Mayor Nutter was there, and he gave me a briefing in the command center and talked about what had happened, and it was serious. At that point, I think there were 6 confirmed fatalities. Then we went out and had a brief press conference, and he said, would you like to go back to the site? Because we were about 100 yards from the actual site of the accident. To that point, I had not seen it. So I said, yeah, I'd like to see it. So we started walking back to the site, and one of his aides just leaned over as we were walking and said, you need to get ready. You need to prepare yourself for this. And got to the site, and indeed, I had to prepare myself for that. I can't imagine the suffering that went on as a result of that accident. So I had to go back to Harrisburg. I had a meeting, bill signing actually, that morning, and then came back that afternoon, and then was at the site 3 more times. Actually, the last time was at the memorial service on Sunday. Went to visit families at the Marriott, and also went to Webster, I think, Elementary School, just to thank the folks who had done so much. I think, and I said at the memorial service, I think we need to reflect on some of the lessons of that accident, that life is contingent, that there's great sadness. You never know what life is going to throw your way. But there are two other things that I think I took away from that. And one was the amazing heroism of ordinary people. We, first responders in Philadelphia, were on that site between 3 and 4 minutes after the accident. People in the neighborhood were there with water and blankets and saying, come to the house, make your phone call in the house, sit on the sofa. There was one family that said, sit down on the sofa, and one of the victims said, nah, I'm so dirty, I don't want to mess up your sofa. She said, we can get a new sofa. I mean, the human beings in the accident and the first responders, those things, I mean, just remarkable. So I think it says nice things about us as human beings, that for all the things that we can criticize ourselves for, it was some amazing acts of heroism were done. And I think the second thing is we need to congratulate ourselves that we hire and maintain such a force of professional first responders, first, second responders, who were there, did heroic things. Remember, they went to the site, the train was overturned, no one knew what they were going to find. There were live wires still there, and they rescued almost all the people. It was really tremendous. So, yes, I was here, and I learned a lot about human nature, about human life, I think, in that accident.
Thank you, Governor. The Marcellus Shale issue, you want to eliminate the state's natural gas impact fee and then impose the 5% tax on drilling as severance tax, thereby overall raising taxes on the industry. The concern amongst people in the business community is that you're going to scare off the industry. And New York State is one in which may be an even bigger competitor, depending on what happens in Albany over there. So should we be worried that taxing an industry like that even higher is going to cost jobs?
Anybody who wants to levy a tax should be afraid of that tax. I come from the business community. I think I have a pretty good sense of the balance that we ought to strike with taxation. We want the public goods that come with taxes. I mean, we want schools, we want roads and bridges, we want those things. And the industry really wants to have the skills that they need to exploit the resource we have here. I want this industry to succeed. I want a really healthy natural gas. I think this could be a game changer for Pennsylvania. So what I'm trying to do is strike that balance. What I hope is a reasonable tax that every other state with natural resources actually has: Texas, Alaska, Wyoming, Louisiana. And so I think that if we have this done reasonably, we could make sure that we're providing the public goods, like education, that industries like the gas industry need to thrive. I want that industry to thrive. If I thought that my proposal on the tax was so high that it would actually have that impact of deterring business development here, I wouldn't support it. I want it to be at the level that would encourage and support that industry.
Some say that out of all the proposals for tax increases in the state, this one has the best chance of getting through the legislature. Would you agree?
I don't know. Again, I think there's a lot of conversations. After the House passed the property tax relief bill that increased income taxes and sales tax in a different way than I suggested, I might argue that might have a better chance of passage. But I think the people of Pennsylvania in surveys support a severance tax. And I think the people of Pennsylvania support, in general, a reset of our tax system so that it's fair and that it actually provides enough money for the public goods that we want. That doesn't mean that government can't be more efficient, and it should be more efficient. And one of the things in the pension reform that I'm proposing is to take a look at the management fees that we pay, to make sure that we're paying the right amount, no more, no less, but no more than we should pay to get the service and the investment advice that we deserve. But I think all in, those kinds of things, I have a Go Time organization that's looking for ways to save money in the Commonwealth, in our government. I think we can do a better job there. But after all is said and done, we still have to pay for the public goods we want, like education, like the roads and bridges. And so we need to have a tax system, but that tax system should be fair.
A lot of people were shocked when they saw how Baltimore unraveled that day several weeks back. Although some people in those communities would say it wasn't much of a shock to them. It was really, a buildup over a great deal of time. Were you shocked as governor? And what lessons have you learned that would help this state and the many large communities in it prevent that from ever happening here?
Well, I think that's one of the things that has led me to look at the property tax relief. I think I talked about, and have since I was running, on about a level playing field. We need to have rules that are equitable and fair. And I think one of the things that I'm trying to achieve with my property tax relief is an elimination of some of the most egregious fiscal disparities between school districts. And I think, you know, if you're living in one of those school districts where you're not getting a lot of education and you're paying a lot for it, you could be forgiven for saying maybe the deck is stacked. I think if you're in a business and you're not being regulated fairly, I think you could be forgiven for saying the deck is stacked. And if you pile on too many of these unfairnesses, no matter who you're piling them on, people just sort of shrug their shoulders and say, I'm not sure this works. The turnout in the election yesterday was dreadful. Turnout in my election was dreadful. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves as Democrats. That's with a small d, small d. Because in a democracy, as citizens, one of the fundamental responsibilities we have is to vote. And too many of us aren't doing that. And they're not doing it because I think they feel that there's nothing they can really do about it. And it transcends all kinds of, you know, race, ethnicity, religion, where you live. Just people aren't voting. And I think all those things, Baltimore is just one more indication, I think, of maybe a sense of bewilderment, maybe a sense that we could do better.
When we spoke, when you were still campaigning last year, you said you would prefer local control in the Philadelphia school district. Every other school district in the state does it, and so that you would oppose the continuing of the School Reform Commission. I know you've made some changes, particularly at the top with the SRC, but is this something that you're looking at, saying, listen, we got to bring parents back into the fold and allow them to be voters and make decisions?
Yeah, I mean, the devil's in the details. You have to figure out how you establish that local control, and I think that's something that deserves discussion. I think you also, it's disingenuous to say, I believe in local control. I'm not going to give you any money. You're not going to have any resources, but have at it. So I think, you know, we have to make sure that when we do this, we're also providing local school districts with the means to actually deliver on the promise of a good education. That's what my budget tries to do across the Commonwealth, including in Philadelphia. And I think if we do that, then I think local control makes all the sense in the world.
Over the course of the last several years, the SRC proposes a new budget, asks for more money from City Council. City Council goes to Harrisburg, asks more money from Harrisburg. Is there a way to end this cycle?
Yeah, pass my budget. No, seriously.
Was that really a softball?
No, yeah, that was a real fun. Thank you so much. I did not pay for that question. But no, here's the, seriously, I think and having talked to some folks in the Philadelphia education system, the SRC was sort of a deal that I think many in Philadelphia still think is sort of the quid pro quo for money coming from Harrisburg. I don't believe that's the way we ought to do education. I live in York County. My daughters both went to the local school district, Northeastern York County School District, not a hothouse school district. They got a great education. And I cared about the education they got. I cared about, and I still do, about my local school district. But I also care about the school district of Philadelphia. And the argument that I think we ought to, that I want to make and continue to make across the state is, all of us care about the school districts in all around the state. That if I'm from York County and the child in Philadelphia doesn't get a good education, my life is diminished. If you live in Erie County and somebody in Elk County did not get a good education, that person in Elk County or in Erie County, their life is diminished. This is a shared responsibility, and you know, all of us are going to have a better or worse Commonwealth depending on how good a job we do in this education, not just in our own home school district, not just with our own families, but all across the Commonwealth. And so the point that I think we need to make is that Philadelphia needs to stop thinking about this as sort of, you know, please charitably give me some money for my schools. This is something that we all need to invest in Philadelphia. And I want to make that point. As a York County, and I think it's important that we invest in Philadelphia. As a York County, I think it's important that we invest in Tioga County schools. And I think that's the thing that may get us beyond this idea of, please, sir, may I have another? Is that what they said now? Or is that the line?
Animal House?
Yeah, that's sorry. I'm trying to be literary here, and this
was branded as a candid conversation. So it was only a matter of time before he made an Animal House reference.
okay.
You opposed the
I was Dickens. He was whatever.
Flounder?
Yeah, Flounder. Okay.
You opposed the expansion of charter schools in Philadelphia, and that's what led to a big fight and the reorganization of the SRC. A lot of parents send their kids to charters, and they love them. Yeah. There are some horror stories. Some have closed. But shouldn't a parent be able to find a school, if their school district is failing them, one that they feel comfortable sending their child?
Yeah, I believe in my wife helped found a charter school in York County, so I'm not sure how I could ever get a reputation for being anti-charter school. I was opposed to that specific thing because of the math. Now, I did go to MIT, so math is important to me. But if you actually do the math and look at how much we were sending to those charter schools in reimbursement, we didn't have enough money. I mean, if you had gone to the limit and said, okay, we're just going to basically say every school child in Philadelphia will go to a charter school, there wasn't enough money to pay for it at the current reimbursement, at that reimbursement rate. So that was a problem. I think the formula was a problem. I have spoken honestly and openly about that. I'm not against charter schools. I just want to be funded fairly. I certainly want them to be held accountable to the same standards that we hold public schools, the traditional public schools, accountable to. But, our education system has always been a very rich blend of private schools, of public schools, of even, we can call them magnet schools or charter schools. We've had those for a long time. We have a VOTEC school, or School of Technology in York County. It feels like a charter school. So we've always done these kinds of things, and there is no reason that they shouldn't continue to enrich the education. We should get great ideas from and different perspectives, and there are all kinds of choices. Pennsylvania, with its 500 or so school districts, parents have all kinds of choices in terms of where they want to live. So, I think it's not the charter school that I was concerned about. It was just the specific way we were funding them and the extent to which we were draining money from the public school system, I thought unfairly, and think unfairly, to make them work. So that was the source of my opposition to that particular.
Fair enough. Florida Governor Rick Scott was in Philadelphia back in February trying to persuade Pennsylvania businesses to move to Florida. I don't know if he met with any of you here in the audience.
Put your hands up. I'm taking notes.
Now, I don't believe you addressed this directly, but some people in your staff called it poaching. He was trying to poach businesses.
Such a harsh word.
So, he goes back to Florida, and they're like, yeah, Rick Scott, let's go get those jobs and bring them here. We don't care about Pennsylvania. So, can you see the reverse, where maybe you go down to Florida, and isn't that the way the game works?
Are there any relatives of Rick Scott here? If I were governor of Florida, I'd be selling too. I'd be going over and trying to poach companies. But do you remember where he went? He went to Wawa. And the family that owns Wawa said, yeah, we're opening up some stores in Florida, but we're a Pennsylvania company. And we're always going to be a Pennsylvania company. This is a place you want to be. We're at the market. This is a big state. If we were an independent country, we'd be the 22nd largest economy in the world, I think. So this is where the action is. So I understand that people come here and want to poach, or whatever that word is. But I think there are things we could do better to make Pennsylvania more attractive to businesses. But this is a great place. I built my business twice, actually. We're headquartered in York, Pennsylvania. We're now in 30-some states. But the workforce here, the location, this is a wonderful place to do business.
Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Allentown, these large municipalities in Pennsylvania, what do they need to do to bring these Fortune 500 companies back?
Well, I think part of the thing is create that level playing field. I think one of the things we saw in York was the tax disparity. And 2/3, again, of the tax bill of the city of York, and I think a big portion of the tax bill here goes to education. If we funded our schools more fairly from a geographic point of view, you'd have a more level playing field, and places like York and Philadelphia compete. For example, my budget proposal calls for real reduction, hundreds of millions of dollars of reduction in the wage tax, both for commuters and residents. I think that's something that would help make Philadelphia more competitive with surrounding areas. We have great universities here. This is a great place to be. My wife and I actually and still rent an apartment in Center City. Philadelphia is an amazing place. And I don't know that anybody who comes here and spends a little time here wouldn't want to live here or build a business here, except for the fact that the economics don't make as much sense. So again, pass my budget. I think we could actually be in a better place. Places like Philadelphia will have much more an ability to compete on a level playing field. And if they're allowed to compete on a level playing field, I think Philadelphia, places like York, Pittsburgh will do great things. They're already doing great things. It'll be even better.
Governor, your views on what to do about the state liquor system differ from many of the people in the legislature. You seek modernization. Sunday sales would be one thing to throw out there. Some Republicans like an outright privatization. Why not an outright privatization?
Well, we can argue over the theory and philosophy of that. And if we were back in the 1930s, I don't know, we could maybe, which is when the state store system was created. But I think right now we have an underperforming asset. I think we can all agree on that. And the question is, what are we going to do about it? If you privatize it, which I don't agree with, but if you privatize it, you wouldn't get much value for what you've done. You'd basically be transferring the ability to make a profit to whomever you sold it to. And so I think what we ought to do instead is try to make it better and try to make it so that, and I call it, those of us who don't want privatization but understand it has to be better, call it modernization. Let's do Sunday sales. Let's have better prices. Let's have a better availability. Let's make the consumer experience better. Let's do that. And if we do that, we have a source of revenue that doesn't come from taxes. It comes from voluntary purchases. And I think, maybe it's my business perspective, that given the fact that Pennsylvania is the biggest, I think, or one of the biggest purchasers of distilled spirits in the world, as a business, I mean, are you salivating out there? Is that what I'm saying? I mean, this is something we could actually do something with. And so before we throw it away, let's try to do something. And it seems to me that would be the first option, rather than just sort of say, there's nothing we can do with it. All right, I'd like to try to do something with it. So that's why I'm really a believer in modernization. Let's make it better. Let's make the consumer experience better, and let's see what we can do from a financial point of view with that.
Governor, as recently as last month, you said that you believe Attorney General Kathleen Kane does not need to resign. Do you still believe that?
I think what I said was I'm content to allow the legal system to take its course. I think the people who are reviewing or investigating what has gone on in the Office of Attorney General certainly know a lot more than I do about that. They certainly know a lot more about the law, and I for one, am content to allow that system, which seems to be working perfectly well, to take its course.
Do you see it as a problem, though, given all the problems that the top law enforcer in Pennsylvania has had, for her to continue doing her job?
I see the perception out there is this is one more thing that I think all of us in public service, whether you're Republican or Democrat, we all have a shared interest in making sure that the citizens of our democracy actually feel good about what we're doing. So anytime I see a public servant at whatever level, whatever party, whatever region of the state, struggling, whose reputation is being called into question, that's a concern.
I will end
the
questions on Kathleen Kane because of the cell phone.
Okay.
You placed a moratorium on the death penalty in Pennsylvania, and part of your reasoning was to protect the innocent. The state is about to try Eric Freen for the murder of a state trooper, Corporal Brian Dixon. And some would suggest that the death penalty was passed in mind for people who kill police officers. So how do you tell the family of a murdered police officer that the moratorium is fair?
I actually have had a conversation with Corporal Dixon's family, wife and mother. And yeah, I make no brief for the perpetrators of heinous crimes like that. And they deserve terrible punishment. The question is the death penalty the appropriate punishment? And the Constitution gives the governor of Pennsylvania the ability to issue a reprieve. So it's not a moratorium. I issued a reprieve, and I will continue to do that until I'm convinced that this particular punishment for heinous crimes is being fairly administered. I'm not sure that it is, that it actually is cost effective, clearly is not, and that it actually brings closure and actually addresses the crime. We've had 3 actual executions in this Commonwealth since the death penalty was brought back in the 1970s. It is a serious issue, and I think a place like Pennsylvania, I think all of us as human beings need to think whether this is this particular penalty, the way it's administered, is being done in a way that serves us as well as it should.
Are you leaning towards abolishment?
I'm a governor of I'm in a democracy here. I was not elected dictator, so
In terms of favoring it yourself, personally?
Well, I've said what I've said. I'm going to. I issued the reprieve, and I will issue a reprieve in the future when I think it's appropriate.
Okay. Your election as governor was an outlier in a year where Republicans were winning all over the place across the country. Was it due to the unpopularity of Governor Corbett as much as it was the popularity of your Jeep?
Oh. I thought it was my charisma. No, I'm just kidding. It was definitely not that. It might have been the Jeep. I mean, no, I think people were looking for something different, and I think what people saw was somebody who actually was doing this for the right reason. That I'm not a career politician. I'm not trying to make this a career. I'm a native Pennsylvanian from South Central Pennsylvania, and it seemed to me that we could be doing things better here, and I think a lot of people evidently thought that they'd like to give me a try, and I'm glad they did. So I'm not so much sure I'm an outlier. I think people across the country were expressing displeasure with the political system, and I think in my election, they were expressing in part that displeasure, but in part expressing the hope that we can do something better.
Would you agree with your predecessor, Governor Corbett, that the Republican legislature can be very difficult to work with?
Oh, no, they're wonderful. Yeah, they're human beings. You know, actually, anybody who would say something like that has never tried to sell building products to a contractor.
Your business experience is what guides you many times?
Well, it's not business. I think it's interacting with human beings. I mean, this was a family business I went back to, but my family, you had to buy the business. They didn't actually understand the meaning of the word inheritance. I don't know why that was. So I had to work my way up through the business, and it was really useful to do that. And I think what I learned throughout that was not so much business practices, but just how to work with people, and what's important and what's not. And I think I have a perspective that may be unusual for people in public life. And I can see what I'm doing now is so different from what I was doing. But I'm still dealing with people. I'm still trying to get people to buy into ideas. I'm still trying to push and promote change. I'm still trying to get us to a better place. So I don't think it's business experience per se. It's just experience in a lot of different contexts, working with a lot of different kinds of people.
Well, let me ask you this. Outside of your political views, you seem to be calm, methodical, and pensive. And
it's the drugs. I'm just kidding. I'm not taking any drugs. I'm really not. It's just water. Just kidding.
Well, don't you have to be mean sometimes when you're governor? And can you be mean?
Yes. Katie McGinty's here. I'm mean sometimes.
Never.
Oh, yeah, all right. Yeah,
Katie
okay.
McGinty is chief of staff.
Chief of staff, right. No, I think you, my daughters, my wife calls it, they call it the hairy eyeball. I mean, I think you, my mother raised me to be polite and write thank you notes, but I'm not a pushover. And I think if you actually you believe in what you're doing, you're confident, I think you don't have to raise your voice that much, but I'm not above doing that, and if pushed, I have done that, and I will. And I get what I want, because I know what I want, and I believe what I want usually is sensible. I could be talked out of it, but I think we have a really good team we put together, and I think we're working hard, and I'm calm when I think things are really going well, and when they're not, I can be as forceful as the next person.
If you don't get what you want, are you willing to let the budget deadline pass?
Yes.
Because you are.
Sure.
Because it's passed many times before. It
Has
almost
it
was
really?
a comical thing in
It has.
Harrisburg.
It has. And I think what you need to focus on is not the date on the calendar that it comes in, but substantively what actually is in the budget. I'll take a substantively good budget that pushes Pennsylvania forward, that comes in late, well before I pull in. I support a budget that comes in that is really stupid, but that comes in on time. So I want substance, and I'm pretty sure that's what all of you would want too. We'll get it right. If it takes a couple extra weeks or months, we'll get it right.
I remember one year legislators delaying Labor Day plans because of this.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen.
July.
I'm doing everything. Let me just reassure you, I am doing everything. We are doing everything in our power to make sure this budget comes in on time. But we're sticking to our guns in terms of wanting Pennsylvania to be better as a result of it. So that's going to be up to a lot of conversations, a lot of different people. We'll do our best.
We will be hosting the Democratic National Convention next year. Are you prepared to endorse Hillary Clinton at any point?
I support Hillary Clinton. She has not asked me to endorse her, but I think it's a great thing for Philadelphia, for Pennsylvania, to have something as big as the Democratic National Convention. Even bigger thing is the Pope's coming to Philadelphia this year, and that could bring in over 1 million people to the Parkway. So I'm excited about things going on in Pennsylvania. I think there are a lot of great things happening here.
Is it bad that she's not really facing, I know she has.
You don't want to talk about the Pope?
Tell you what, that'll be our next question.
Okay.
Is it bad that she's not facing formidable opposition?
I don't know. Yeah, no, I don't. I think maybe this might make it easier in the general election. Sometimes primaries can get messy, but I'm not much for handicapping. I think she'll be a good nominee, and I think she'll be the nominee of the party.
Here's my Pope question then. He's coming in 4 months,
Yes.
and we at the station have a Pope countdown clock, and it's running. It's by the second.
No, you don't have a DNC countdown clock? Oh, you? Yeah,
It's
sure.
very easy
Promises,
to retrofit.
promises. Yeah, okay.
So it's fun, and there's actually a cutout of the Pope right next to it. It actually looks like it's life size.
Really?
It looks like it. But you walk by my boss's office and
That just
think
seems.
the Pope is there.
Katie, that seems wrong, doesn't it?
So,
Selfies. Okay.
so the Pope Francis, the Democratic National Convention, and there's a sense amongst many people in the business community and others that Philadelphia is ready to actually go up another notch in the ladder. We are already pretty high. On the world stage, the World Cup, the Summer Olympics, should the city dream of that, and how does the city get to that next level?
Up another notch? How much higher could we get? I mean, this is Pennsylvania. No, I think that we're showing, this gives us a chance to show the world what we already know about Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. We're a great place. And I think it's really neat that the Pope is coming here. I think when I was trying to help a lot of other people sell the Democratic Party on having their convention here, I said, just think about Independence Hall is the back. This is where this nation started. What an amazing place to have a convention. So I think there are a lot of things that are attractive about Philadelphia. It's a great place to live. I think the folks who are organizing the papal visit recognize that. So yeah, we can maybe get our story out. You know, we're a modest bunch, but we can get our story out maybe a little more forcefully than we have in the past. But we need to be proud of ourselves, and in terms of what we have here, maybe we deserve to tout a little bit more. But I think I hope what the folks who come here as part of the Pope's visit, and people who come here as part of the DNC, and all the other organizations who come here for conventions, will see that this is a pretty remarkable place.
You hosted a roundtable discussion in your residence this week on medical marijuana, and the state Senate seems to be ready to get legislation going. Some members of the House are not in favor of that at all. Will you personally try to convince the skeptics otherwise, because I know you support medical marijuana, and would you go so far as to say that Pennsylvania has a future in actually gaining revenue from this as an industry like Colorado?
Well, no, that's different. I'm supporting medical marijuana.
I know. It's very different things.
Just for the record here.
Well, let's answer the first question.
First, okay. No, I think what I was trying to do with the roundtable, and what I've done in my support of legalizing medical marijuana is to say, doctors really ought to have the ability and the freedom to prescribe the medicine they think is most appropriate for the disease they're trying to fight. They're looking out for the best interests of their patients. They ought to make that decision. We shouldn't. The government shouldn't. And I think the more I learn, the more I believe that. So I thought the roundtable was a helpful way of just getting information out to that extent, and I think it succeeded. So, yeah, I believe that, and I believe doctors ought to have that ability, that right, and so I support the legalization. And by the way, the coalition of senators who voted for it, I mean, really unusual. Mike Fulmer, very conservative Republican senator, Dalen Leach, fairly progressive Democrat, came together on this issue. And listening to the stories of the families whose family members or themselves are suffering through ailments that seems pretty easily addressed with legalized medical cannabis, makes me think that we ought to support Senator Fulmer and Senator Leach in what they're trying to do.
So as for full legalization with like Colorado, where do you stand on that?
I want decriminalization because I think with what we do with mandatory sentences, the possession of small quantities of, say, marijuana leads to real bad marks on people's permanent records, which makes it tough. We break up families, we destroy lives, we actually make it hard for employers to hire people. I know we always did a background check, and for a long time we'd look at someone who had a felony conviction or spent time in jail. We wouldn't even ask whether it was for a violent or nonviolent offense. We'd say, we're not even going to try. Then we went to Second Chance, said, nah, let's take a look at that. And for nonviolent offenders, we got some really great employees. But I don't think most businesses are in a position of doing that, and so I'm for decriminalization. I think we ought to see what happens in Colorado in terms of the full legalization and see what their experience is before we go in that. This is one of those places that states really are the laboratories of democracy, and this is a place we can see what their experience is before we make the great leap.
Given that you're in a room filled with business people, would you like to share with them whom your favorite economist is?
Yeah, well, that's a trick question. You're all thinking John Maynard Keynes, right? No, my favorite economist actually is an economist at the University of Chicago named Luigi Zingales. Anybody ever read anything of his? His most recent book is called Capitalism for the People. And he's conservative. He immigrated to the United States from Italy. And his concern really with Italy was that it had become sort of a nest of cronyism, that depended more on who you knew more than what you knew, that mattered in getting ahead. And so he saw the United States as a place where you actually had an open field, where the market actually worked. And so his book was sort of addressed to those of us who were trying to preserve that level playing field, that open market, and saying that actually the real threat to the free market is not coming from the left, it's coming from the right, and crony capitalism is the real threat. So I think I like him because I think that's true. I come out of a very competitive sector of the economy, building products. Unless you look, I guess, at which I think we look at the interest deduction on mortgages, which is sort of a very indirect way that my kitchen cabinets, I guess, go into homes, but it's a fairly competitive market. I think there's some really interesting, innovative things that take place when the market works. Adam Smith, for example, in Wealth of Nations, was decrying the mercantilist philosophy that was actually the intrusion of government into the market. So he was a real radical, and I think in many ways Luigi Zingales makes the same case. So yeah, he is a favorite of mine.
Governor Corbett uncapped a gas tax in order to get more revenue in for bridges and roads and mass transit. You glad he did that?
I'm glad that he actually helped free up funds, and I think the legislature did a lot of work on that too, to make sure that we have funds to invest in infrastructure. Act 89, which is the number of the act, actually allows us to invest the money we need to invest to keep our bridges from falling down, to actually reinvest in our roads and highways. We really need to do this. And I say that not because my business, I depend on highways and bridges, but because that's what a society does to make the market work really well. So to the extent that he did that and allowed that to sign that bill, that's really a great thing. My concern with the way he did it was that he sort of denied that he was doing that. I think we ought to embrace the idea that there are certain things we're going to have to invest in. There are certain things, we don't want government to do everything. We don't want it to do a whole lot. But there are a few things we want it to do. And if we want our market to work optimally, we're going to have to invest money in things like roads and bridges. And so I applaud Act 89, and I think it's moving us in a direction we ought to make the same kind of investment decision on education.
These are business people. They are busy. So final question, what do you wish you know now you knew then before you became governor?
I keep getting asked that question. I got to say, I'm going to confess, this is a confession, I am having more fun in this job than anybody should. So I was surprised by that this is a really enjoyable job. I love being a spokesperson for the people of Pennsylvania. As I say, I'm proud of the state. I love what I'm doing. So that was the biggest surprise. That's what I didn't know. I knew I could do interesting things. I knew I could be in a position to convince people, or at least try to convince people of things on a much grander scale than I could when I was working as chair of the board of the United Way of York County. I didn't know it was going to be this much fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Thomas Westerman Wolf, Governor of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure being your host the last 3 years. Now introducing Dennis O'Brien from PICO with some closing remarks.
Let's hear it for Matt in 6 ABC.
Thank you.
I'll keep it short here tonight. We do have one guest in the audience that we did not recognize yet, Katie McGinty, the Chief of Staff of the Governor. For those of you that don't know, she's a Philadelphia native, and it's good to have you back in your hometown here. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thanks to everyone that joined us here tonight. Please stay and join us for the reception, as some of the governor's cabinet and folks will stay here, and the reception's right outside the door here. Thanks for joining us.